Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Douglas Johnson. I am a certified yoga teacher at the advanced 500-hour level, a certified yoga nidra facilitator, a kirtan artist, musician, amongst other things. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about embodying a yoga posture. Before I do talk about that though, I do want to thank all of my patrons on Patreon. They are the community that make these talks possible. So these talks are really a collaboration. I do the shooting, the video, choose the subject, whatnot, but they actually support this work and make it possible for me to share it without charging a fee or having some kind of paywall, which is very important to me. So if you would like to become a part of that community, then you can check out the links below and there'll be all the information you need to sign up. All right, so embodying a yoga posture. Have you ever been in a yoga pose in a class and you wanted to come out of it? Have you ever been in Shavasana or Yoga Nidra and you wanted to move? Have you ever been doing seated meditation and you wanted to get up and leave and do something else? So this is a very common experience. I experience it myself, obviously, and I think almost anyone who does yoga practices in earnest will encounter this experience. And so I want to explore this experience with you and give you my perspective of what your options are and what sort of things you can expect by choosing certain options. Another example might be chanting, and you just want to stop chanting. You're like, this is boring. Okay, so these are all yoga practices, and I would say if you're doing yoga in earnest with a experienced teacher, a teacher who knows what they're doing, then you should encounter this experience sooner or later. If you're doing yoga and it's just all fun and games and you never feel an aversion come up to what you're doing, I guess you're either enlightened already, in which case, why are you listening to this talk? Or you are choosing practices that aren't actually allowing you to grow. And so we'll explore this subject, what I mean by that. So a yoga posture, let's just take that as our main example because that's what inspired this talk. A yoga posture is inviting us to embody something, an energy. Sometimes it's the energy of an animal. Sometimes it's the energy of a yogic saint. They have all different kinds of names. And sometimes the name is very apt. Other times, the name isn't so important. It's just what's going on in the posture. And there are different postures for different purposes. But I guess I'm mostly talking about right now postures that ask us to embody strength or power. So this is interesting because, as many of you know, I've been teaching for a very long time, and I teach a lot. So it's not just I teach one class a week over 20 years. I teach as much as I have taught as much as 25 classes in a week. And I've been teaching for also a very long time. So I've taught a lot. I've seen a lot. I've also done a lot of training with different teachers with different perspectives. And what you will see is oftentimes when you're doing these strength postures, a warrior 2, especially, but there are other postures as well, like goddess. You'll be holding the class in this posture, and then some people will just come out of it. Now, there are legitimate reasons for coming out of a yoga posture, okay? So I don't want anyone to feel guilty if I'm describing your experience. That's not the point. I'm not really interested in making people feel guilty or feel bad or feel ashamed for their behavior or their choices. But I am interested in helping them understand why they may want to make a different choice in the future. So when I embody a certain posture, especially standing postures, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have an element of power and strength. So the goddess pose in Sanskrit is Ukkata Konasana, the fierce angle pose. And in English, we often call it goddess. Still powerful, right? A goddess, somebody who's powerful, strong. The warrior two shape. Again, you're thinking of a warrior, someone courageous, brave, strong, someone ready to face hardship, to realize their ideals. So they might even be willing to lose their life in the name of something like freedom or justice or some other abstract concept like that. So I think this is important because what the posture is inviting us to do is to embody this energy of a warrior, of a goddess, of fierceness. And here's what I'd like you to understand. You personally, as an ego, you personally, given your personal history on this planet and as a human being, you may not feel like you have that. You may not feel fierce. You may not feel powerful. You may not feel courageous. You might feel just the opposite of all of those things. Fragile, weak, vulnerable, okay? Now, what yoga postures are giving us the opportunity to do is hopefully in a safe environment, because hopefully you practice in a space and with people and with a teacher that you feel that you can trust. I think that's an important point. So if you don't, then you may want to find someplace else or somebody else to practice with. But the hope is that you feel safe. So you're in a safe environment, and what you're being invited to do is in this safe environment, let's explore being fierce. Let's explore being powerful. Let's explore being courageous, even if personally you don't feel that, okay? So if you go back to my talks, you'll find talks where I talk about the invisible cage and the sort of psychological cage that we live in. And this is very relevant to what we're talking about today. You're in the yoga posture, and what will happen if things are working as they are supposed to, you will reach a point where your ego, your small sense of self, says, yeah, I can't do this. This is above my pay grade. I'm not that strong. I'm not that fierce. I'm not that courageous. I'm not whatever it is. Whatever the shape is embodying, your ego comes up and says, no. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. And that's natural. That's to be expected. Okay, so it's very important to understand this. If things are going right, that should happen if this is something that you don't naturally embody. Now, I do want to mention that the opposite extreme is also the same. So you may not feel like you can relax. You may not feel like you can be still. You may not feel like you can meditate. I've heard this as well. So I'm not just saying it's for people who can't be strong. Those people might be very comfortable surrendering, relaxing, letting go. But when it comes to being strong and fierce, they have a problem with it, okay? So just stick with me. So we're embodying this physical shape that requires a psychological component. It's not just physically doing the shape. When we do the shape and we get to the point where our ego is saying, you're too small for this, you can't do this, this isn't for you, you're too old, you're injured, you're too weak, you're overweight, whatever the narrative is, we're given the opportunity to go a little deeper, because thought is relatively on the surface. It's not really that deep. To go a little deeper and ask the question, inquire, is that really true? What would happen if I just held my arms up? So I think I've given a talk specifically about this, related with this, about Warrior 2, where you're keeping your arm up and people will drop their arms. So if someone said to you, I'm going to give you $3 million if you just keep your arms up, I think most of you can do it. I think almost everybody can do it. There might be a few people that have very specific injuries that would not be able to do that. But if the reward is seen as great enough, then many people can say, well, I'm just going to push through these thoughts of, I can't do this any longer. And this is what I'd like you to understand, that the reward is, it's greater than $3 million, okay? It's freedom. It's realizing you aren't who and what you thought you were. Very, very important from a yogic perspective. But how do I learn that? How do I experience that? I have to come up to this edge, this psychological edge. And it may be physical as well, because you might be thinking certain physical sensations mean you need to stop. And if you always stop when you feel those sensations, then you will never learn that actually you could push beyond them, okay? Now I'll say this, it's possible that for certain individuals with certain medical conditions, that when they are getting the signals you need to stop, you know, the thoughts you need to stop, the feelings, that they do have to stop. Okay, I'm not saying that's not possible. So you may have a certain condition where that is just the way that it is, okay? And I am not talking to those people. And hopefully you know who you are, okay? And this is why we inquire, we investigate. We don't want to take the ego and the mind at its surface narrative. Because if we do, we'll find that there are many things in life that we could do that would be extremely rewarding that we never do, because our mind just says, you can't do that. Stop. This is uncomfortable. This is difficult. So in these traditions like yoga, Taoism, Zen, other traditions that I've studied, discipline is a very important thing. Discipline, okay? Being willing to say, yes, I'd like to get up right now, but I will not. Yes, I'd like to drop my arms, but I won't. Whatever it might be, okay? Because what we're trying to do is break free of the ego's conception of what we are and our limits, our edges, our boundaries. Because this is essentially what the ego is. It is a false sense of boundaries, of limitations. And you are much less restricted than you may believe that you are. So it's a little bit like being an actor. Maybe you personally are not someone who is courageous and strong and fearless and fierce and powerful. Maybe you've never felt that. Maybe you've never experienced that. That's okay. Your life may not have given you many opportunities to explore that. So, yoga in a safe environment, again, hopefully it's safe. If not, find one that is. In a safe environment, you are invited to play the part, to act as if, to pretend that you are strong or fierce or powerful or brave, whatever the posture is asking you to embody. And just explore that. How does that feel? Try it on for size. It's like putting on some clothes. Putting on some clothes, right? Put on a certain outfit. It might make you feel a different way. Actors will talk about this. They'll look in the mirror and they'll see the character that they are supposed to embody in their part. And when they look in the mirror, they see that, they're like, wow, it's so easy when I look this way, right? To embody that energy. So the postures gives us this opportunity. That's really what it is. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to explore, to ask questions. Now, again, maybe you're in a warrior two, your arm is outstretched, you feel a burning sensation or a sharp pain, or you know that you just recently hurt your shoulders. Maybe you drop them, and that's okay. Again, I have no interest in making people feel guilty about their choices. What I am trying to do is educate that if that isn't the case, if it's just some discomfort, see if you can, again, inquire, and not physically, although there might be a physical component to it, but see if you can explore what's on the other side of that thought or idea of I need to stop. Again, what happens if you don't stop? Is it really going to be disastrous? Your arm is like this. Is this really dangerous? Honestly, is this really lifting your arm like this? For most people, is this going to be dangerous, harmful, keeping your arm up like this? I think most people would agree it's not. It's going to be rare that that is a super dangerous and harmful thing for you to do. You're just fatiguing muscle. This isn't a particularly flexibility-inducing thing to do, okay? You're just fatiguing muscle. And fatiguing muscle doesn't feel particularly good. And this is the genius of a lot of yoga, in my perspective. A lot of yoga will stress the body in a very safe way. Not all of it, mind you. There's some contortions and things that, if you're not careful, you can end up pushing yourself to a point where it may not be safe. But a lot of yoga, and most average yoga classes, you're going to be within fairly safe limits of what a human body can do. And again, what you're being asked to do is to explore the outer edges of what you think you can do, what you think is possible, and to notice what comes up as you hit that edge, right? So as I begin doing something that's difficult, how do I react? This is another aspect of this. Do I start beating up on myself? Oh my God, I'm so out of shape. I'm so weak. I'm so overweight. I'm so old. I suck at this. I should stop. Look at everyone else is doing better than me. Do you attack others? Oh, this teacher sucks. I hate this pose. I hate this teacher. I hate this class. This is stupid. This is too hard. This is dangerous. Okay? Again, where do we go when we are at the edge? A good yoga class and teacher and program allow us to explore in a safe way these edges where these types of judgments and thoughts and ideas can come to the surface, so we can begin investigating them, and again, in a safe environment, we can hopefully explore different choices. So a lot of people go to yoga pretty regularly. And let's just say over a week-to-week basis, you go to a class and 1 week, let's say you're holding a chair pose, and you begin to feel a lot of sensation, and you just come out of the pose because you're not used to that. You aren't used to feeling that much sensation. It felt overwhelming, and you had the thought, I need to stop, I need to come out of this, and there you didn't investigate. So maybe the next week you go back after hearing this talk, and you're holding the chair pose, and you want to come out of it, but you remember to inquire. So before you come out of it, you investigate. Do I really need to come out of this pose? Am I really in danger? Is this just uncomfortable, but I can actually learn to breathe through this and relax into this? Now, maybe the first time you do that, the answer is no. And you come out of the pose. Again, no shame, no guilt. You at least brought some awareness to that experience. You investigated. But let's say the third week, you go back and same thing happens. You begin to feel that sensation and you begin to inquire. And then you notice that the thought, I need to come out of this pose, and the sensation are there, but that there's a lot more than that. There's a lot of space and emptiness and openness around the thought and the sensation. And that if you explore that, there's a sort of strength in it. There is a potential to embody something that thought and that sensation is not. And so you might have the thought, or pick the thought, you could say, out of the ether, out of the space, right? That inner space. You might pick the thought, I'm more powerful than this posture. I'm infinite. I don't know the bounds of my power. And then you might find all of a sudden you feel stronger. You feel like you could hold that pose indefinitely. You find a steadiness in your breath that allows you to stay calm and yet feel very strong. This is what I'm speaking about, okay? Exploring these concepts and ideas in real time. Now, I wish that I could speak like this while teaching a flow class. It's very difficult because flow moves quickly. You're in and out of postures. And so there is a limited amount of time for me to try and articulate these rather subtle and complex ideas to students, which is part of the reason why I created this channel. So those of you that do come to class with me, you can, hopefully we can slow things down here. And I can give you some guidance that might be difficult in a drop-in class setting that allows you to explore going deeper into the practice. I'll share with you a personal story from a student of mine who has since passed away, a beautiful soul. Her name was Petra. She was German. She was a chemist and a real sharp spiritual explorer. It's the best I can think at the moment to describe her. She could really look very deep. And she was on a retreat with me, and we were doing a flow style class. And in this particular class, I had not planned this. We ended up holding the down dog for a very, very long time. And then we would do some flow, and then we would hold the down dog again. And I was exploring similar concepts to these. Being present, being with your breath. And so we were in the down dog, and people were getting tired in the down dog. They wanted to do other things, but I was holding them there. And we were in a retreat environment, so it was a very, you could say, disciplined environment. Maybe if we were in a drop-in class, people would have started walking out, but we're up in a mountain together and we're there to explore. And so that's what we were doing. And Petra told me afterwards that, you know, at first she was thinking, oh, you know, God, this sucks. Why are we holding this so long? Can't we just do something else? The ego, again, complaining. And she said at a certain point, she felt her ego leave through the top of her head. And she said from then on, she just felt peace, and she felt like she could hold the pose indefinitely, down dog. There's no more resistance, okay? This is a great example of what can happen when we're willing to surrender these ideas that we have. Now, this happened spontaneously for her. It may not happen spontaneously for you, but I think even if it doesn't happen spontaneously, it is something that you can still explore. You can try and willingly surrender rather than spontaneously surrender. I'll give you another example, because this isn't just about yoga postures. Krishna Das tells the story of how he was first introduced to the yoga practice of mantra, chanting, specifically kirtan. And he was with his guru, his teacher in India, and his teacher took a group of Americans, gave them a harmonium and a drum, and he said, chant. And the way Krishna Das relays the story is, my guru said chant, and he never said stop. And they chanted and chanted for hours and hours and days, and he said he went through every possible emotion. First it was fun, then they got bored, then began to feel frustration or anger. Why doesn't he tell us to stop? When are they going to come and get us? When is dinner? All the usual, like, how long can we do this? You know, how long are we supposed to do this? What is this about? And he said eventually he broke through to the other side. And very much like Petra, he said he could keep chanting forever. He felt free, he felt light. Okay? So again, the ego, it gets bored really easily. It constantly wants to be entertained. It wants to be fed something new, something interesting, something different. This is one reason why flow yoga is so popular in the United States, because it can be taught in a way that is really the opposite of yogic principles. I'm not saying it always is, and I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but it tends to be the most popular form because it lends itself very easily to the ego's goals of distraction, of building the ego up instead of tearing the ego down, okay? And these are really important principles. Again, this is about ultimately your happiness, your freedom, a deep sense of peace. This is what I'm trying to share with you. I'm not interested in making anyone feel guilty or bad for enjoying vinyasa yoga or flow yoga or working out or any of these things. But the goal of a Western style workout is not the same as a deep yoga practice, okay? And if you're not careful, if a teacher does not really understand the real purpose of yoga, something like yoga chitta vritti nirodha, then she might teach in a way that feels really good, and the ego feels really good. Oh, I did something. I worked out. I'm fit. I'm sexy. I'm strong. It just gives this narrative. And yet, we weren't actually challenged in a deep psychological way. We weren't given time to investigate our edges. We were on to the next thing, okay? So, Krishna Das, my late student Petra, these are great examples of what is possible when we explore. Now again, if you need to come out of a pose, you need to come out of a pose. I don't want you to feel guilty or ashamed or anything like that. But I do want to encourage you, if you always come out of the pose, if you're always, oh, it's too hard, it's too difficult, or whatever it is, the other side is true too, right? Oh, I can't meditate. I can't be still. Oh, I don't like yoga nidra. I can't relax. All these kinds of things, right? Shavasana, you're always moving every Shavasana. You're always fixing something, adjusting something. You're always doing the hardest classes. You can never do something easy. It feels like a waste of time, right? Relaxing, being still, being quiet feels like a waste of time. You've got too much to do. You're too important. So again, exploring these things, a good yoga program, teacher, studio program will ask those who have trouble being still to be still. And it will ask those who have trouble being strong to be strong. It will invite you to get out of what you think you are, the limited self that you think you are, okay? And usually, this does not feel very good. And there's a word that's used in yoga called tapas. It literally means to cook or to heat up, okay? And this is a very important principle from my perspective. These practices are, in a sense, designed to show us where there's friction. So if there's no friction, and I'm talking about internally, then whatever I do it without suffering. I do it, you could say, with a smile on my face. Where there is friction, then I will find it creates suffering. So again, keeping my arms lifted up. Sure, there might be some sensation there, muscle fatigue, whatnot, but there won't be any suffering. But if I have some psychological principles, I'm not that strong, or I'm injured, or this doesn't feel good, and I need to always feel good, then I will drop my arms, right? I will come out of the pose in some way. I will modify the posture in some way to make it suit me. And this is a very important principle. I learned about something called skeletal variation from one of my teachers, and it's an important point because on a skeletal level, we are all different. And if we ignore that and we try and push through skeletal differences, then we will likely end up with some serious injuries. Okay, so again, these points, they really need to be grasped fully, because it's not a simple always push through or always do what's comfortable or easy. There are times and places where the resistance is psychological. It's not a physical danger we're in. In those instances, generally speaking, we want to explore. You don't have to like jam through, okay? But again, like in a goddess pose or a warrior or a chair pose, how can you explore? Maybe you take one more breath before you come out of it. Maybe you take 2 breaths before you come out of it. Maybe you take 3 extra breaths before you come out of it, okay? This is what's nice about, again, a safe and appropriately set up yoga practice, is we can play with increments. Doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can explore, all right, I really feel like I need to come out of this. Maybe I can take one more breath. Maybe you take that breath and then you find, well, actually, I think I can take another breath. Okay, so do you see what I'm saying here? Because if you misinterpret what I'm saying, then you might think that you just need to, ramrod over discomfort or resistance or whatever it is. Again, we're talking about physical safety. I would recommend never trying to push beyond that. But you do have to be able to assess accurately, is something actually physical danger or is it just discomfort? Because there's a lot of things that can be uncomfortable without being dangerous. Now that's beyond the scope of this talk, and that is something that you as an individual really need to do. You can do it in conjunction with a knowledgeable teacher, but it's specific to you. Again, because it's specific to you, I can't make large, huge generalizations about it. It is something, if you're like, well, chair pose really hurts, you would need to sit down and figure out what's going on. Is there a way for you to do it where, it's not so painful? Is the pain because of an injury? Is it because of some, physical, perhaps deficiency or deformity or something? Is it something unique to your body? With a small alteration, you can do the pose and get to that point where it's just the muscles fatiguing. It's not actually something in danger, okay? So again, I really want to communicate this in a way that hopefully you can benefit from it. Because if the message you get is just, oh, I just need to ramrod through any discomfort, I need to push through, then I think you can do some damage. And then if on the other hand, you are like, well, this is uncomfortable, that's uncomfortable, so I'm just gonna stop, it's probably dangerous, and you're not exploring and looking, you don't actually know if it's dangerous or not, it's just uncomfortable, and you're assuming that discomfort is danger, then I need to encourage you to try and look a little deeper, a little closer, explore, ask some questions. So the idea of tapas in yoga is that it's a kind of a burning, a kind of a purification. It's quite literally can be interpreted in that way, that in that friction, wherever my ego is still operating, you might say, I'm going to experience this psychological friction. And when I'm experiencing that, the practices give me the opportunity to, in essence, burn away the ego by not listening to it, by not indulging it, by not believing it. Do you see? Do you understand? It's given me an opportunity to question the narrative that the ego is handing me. It's saying, you're sick, you're overweight, you're injured, you're too old, you are whatever. I can buy that and believe that, and then that will be my experience. Or I can begin to question, and again, in small ways, explore. Explore. Okay, this makes me very uncomfortable, but can I explore? Again, one more breath. Let me do one more minute of meditation before I get up, right? Let me add 1 minute to my meditation daily and see if I can do a little bit more. Let me explore my edge, where that friction is. Because again, for some it will be physically being strong or psychologically being strong. For others, it will be surrendering or letting go. They will not feel comfortable or like they can do that. They will feel a lot of discomfort when they are asked to just be still and to surrender and to let go. And again, it's not uncommon. And that does not mean you can't meditate or that you shouldn't meditate. Very important to understand. Again, for others, it will be chanting. I don't have a pretty voice. Or maybe I do have a pretty voice, but I don't like chanting. I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. Again, so many opportunities in yoga. It really is beautiful because, again, unless you have a teacher who's really pushing things too far in a, again, using guilt and shame and fear to drive you. And I've seen these teachers, so I regret to say they're out there. You do need to be a bit careful, okay? But I don't want to push you to do anything. What I want to do is educate you. And then I want you to explore. To explore, again, stepping out of the comfort zone. Because the comfort zone is an invisible cage. It's a mental cage. It's an emotional cage. It's not physical. But when you get to the edge of the cage is like an electrified fence, an invisible electric fence. And when you get to the edge of the barrier, you're going to feel discomfort, the electric shock of discomfort. Okay? Now, you can back away from that and be, whoop, that's the edge of the cage, that's as far as I go. And again, that is ego and personality right there. Or you can say, let me see if I can just take a step out of this and let's just see what happens. Again, I might have the narrative in my head that all hell will break loose. I might not even know. There might just be a sense of fear. I might not have ever even thought about what happens if I hold the yoga pose for one more breath, or if I do one more push-up, or I hold my meditation for another 5 minutes. I might not have ever investigated that or looked at that. And this goes beyond yoga practice, folks. Again, what if I don't have dessert? What if I don't have something to eat at the first impulse to do so? What if I don't binge watch television? What if I put away my phone for the whole weekend? Again, there's so many ways we can explore these edges, these things that make us uncomfortable. And in a sense, all of these, you could say, or many of them, are a form of spiritual fasting, what we call spiritual fasting, which is where you intentionally go without something that you suspect maybe you have an unhealthy relationship with. All right, everyone. I hope this made sense. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, please do reach out and let me know. I will try my best to address them. I would love to hear from you regardless, though. So leave a comment. And if you want to help out, give a thumbs up. Share the video with someone who you think can get something from it. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And again, if you do want to contribute a bit more, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And every little bit does add up. So this is donation-based work. Someone is paying so that you can watch this video, because otherwise I wouldn't have the resources to do it. So even if you don't choose to be one of those people, in your heart, in your prayers, please give them a heartfelt thank you. Speaking of which, I want to thank you for listening today. And until next time, namaste, and have a beautiful, beautiful